Welcome to People Love Process. This movie is going to be another impromptu episode of over the shoulder vector building. It's not just something that I decided I wanted to create. This started off as a client project. Well, it started and ended as a client project. It was a university, and this is all public facing, so I'm not disclosing something I shouldn't here, by the way. If you go online, you can look up their current mascot, and this is what they had. And the creative director was smart enough to know this probably wasn't up to par with what it really should be. I would agree with that. There's a lot of awkward parts of it when you look at it. Whoever did this, it's pretty clear they don't know how to leverage vector art very well. The hand just looks kind of odd. And this knight is supposed to be like in a knight's position, like he's kneeled on the ground, even though you don't see his legs or both of his legs, that is. And he has his hand on his knee and the sword. It's like that classic knight pose where it's saying, I'm giving honor to the king or something like that. That's what it's supposed to be representing, but there's a lot of issues to it. It's very squatty, I thought. I don't like how they just truncate the sword. It's just chopped off. It doesn't really make sense. And why is his arms and the sword coming out of the shield, but everything else is in it? It makes it really odd to kind of read it the way you're supposed to, I guess. This is how it looks when it's locked up in context with the type. I'm not a big fan of the typography either. And when you look at their primary branding, their primary logo mark, for the university, it's really well crafted, really well designed, and this is like the polar opposite. It doesn't really match the aesthetic. So I wanted to bring, clarity and a strength to their character graphic that would match the strength and precision and craftsmanship that their main primary branding obviously has. They sent me a creative brief, so I was able to see all those elements, and that was my goal setting out, or our goal, I should say, because I said the same thing to the creative director, and so we set forward, and I just want to walk you through that initial process and where the project kind of went off the rails, and it was no fault of the creative director, by the way, I worked with. Or mine for that matter. It just became more of a political thing from the decision maker side of the equation on the part of the university. So let's just walk through it. Here's the initial rough I did, and this isn't something I put in front of them to get them to approve anything. This was just to figure it out for myself. And I put the PSD inside the exercise files so you can click through it and see the very crude rough and then how I started refining it moving forward and tried to clarify, the weight and the detail that I have shown here. But I really didn't like my hand. And at the time, last year, our kitchen flooded. And we were without a kitchen for like 4 months. And so I was working on this in the process of them installing our new kitchen. And one of the contractor guys was there that day. And I said, hey, could you do this pose for me? And I showed him what I meant and showed him my sketch. But I said, look at this hand. It's kind of lame. And I just need good reference of a hand. So this is the contractor's hand. That's what I used to draw from. So I pull reference anywhere I can. He just happened to be there when I was working on it. And so I utilized him. But this is clearly a crude sketch. So I wanted to make a drawing template based off of this that I could then draw it more precisely and take more time to really work out the specific shapes and forms. I think there's issues with some of the things I have going on here. And this is where I'll bring my rough sketch into Illustrator, and on top of it, I'll just start building some of the shapes just to establish the framework that I want to draw from. This is like a drawing template. And I'll print what you see out just like this, and then I'll go on to my light pad. Light pads are awesome. Just think like a light table, but it's only about, I don't know, 3/8 of an inch thick. I've had it for years. Replaced the top from the plastic that it came with to glass so I can cut on it with an X-Acto or whatever if I want to. It's a tool I use. I don't use it every day, but when I need it, it really does help. And that's how I do refining. I like drawing everything in analog. Of course, if you work digitally, you could just do all of that on an iPad if you want. I just don't like the tactile feedback of the iPad for drawing. So where'd I go from this? Well, I did my refined sketch, and this is the refined sketch that I drew from that template. And once again, I used it to establish the width of the lines, but here I clarified shape and form and what was going to be shadows, what was going to be details, and just to make sure it's going to look good. And so this is what I scan into Photoshop, and I want to test it. I want to fill in the dark areas to see if it's going to look all right. And so this is where it led to. And the more I was looking at this, I realized, oh, you know what? I kind of forgot a finger on his hand holding his sword. Oops. Yes, I've done that in an illustration before where I realized one of my characters had 5 fingers and the other hand had 4. And I'm going, how did I miss that? So pay attention to when you're creating. So I decided to fix that. So you can see I added, now this has the proper amount of digits. This didn't before. And that was the first change I made. And that was after setting it aside, coming back to it with fresh eyes and looking at it again. And then I did that again. And this is what I originally was going to start building out. So it was this area here. I just thought this was kind of weird, this area. I like the angle of his arm, and so I decided I need to simplify that to make that angle look better. And so I did that, and I like that a lot better. It looks cleaner. It's not as distracting. And this was what I was going to build out for this movie. Well, this just goes to show you, if you have time to set something aside, do it. Because your eye will pick up on things that you get so used to looking at something. And when I came back to this and I was preparing the file to record today, this was last night, and I'm looking at it and going, something's bugging me about this. What's bugging me? And I realized, oh, you know what? His foreground of his knee that he has his arm over, that part of his leg is a little too short. It would be longer. It's the thing facing closest to the viewer. And those are the things that are hard to pick up in the moment if you're going at kind of an accelerated rate. In my case, to meet a deadline to get them a tight sketch they can pass around. And so this was actually the sketch. This is the stage it went where I sent this off as my final sketch. And this made the rounds, and I'm thinking, well, obviously, I love this a lot more than what they had. It fits the aesthetic. If you put the brand mark next to this, it fits the aesthetic because their geometry and their brand mark is so defined and clean and well executed. And I thought this would go well with that. But ultimately, the decision makers on their side are so used to having bad art. And there's a great quote. I'm not going to be able to, I'll be able to paraphrase it, but not quote it verbatim. Rand Paul, one of the most, but he was the designer that branded Steve Jobs' new company after he got fired from Apple called Next. And it's the whole story of him, and Jobs hired him to brand it for him. He comes in with one design, not 5, not 20, one, and says, this is your new logo to Steve Jobs, which is an amazing story if you've never heard that. But That said, I don't much like the next logo. I don't think it's one of his better designs, but he had a really good saying that I hadn't heard ever until about 5 or 6 years ago. I stumbled upon it. I'm going, where was this quote? This makes sense of everything. And it was about why is it that people kind of hold on to something that's clearly bad from a designer point of view? We can tell them it's bad, but they still decide that's what they want to go with. It was kind of in that context. And after I'm done recording this movie, I'll put a note I'll put that quote in the exercise files, or I'll put a link under the movie's description to where you can see what that quote is, because I'm not doing it justice right now. But ultimately, it explained that the public gets so used to bad ideas and bad design that when good design's presented to them, they almost feel threatened by it. And that sounds weird. You'd think, well, they can clearly see it's better. No, the familiar is what they're comfortable with. So new is uncomfortable. That's what it comes down to. And I just thought that was a brilliant take by one of the best designers that's ever been in our industry. And I can validate it. It's so true. So this became political in the sense that they were so adored by their old crappy artwork that they just couldn't decide to move forward with a better design. And I think it was because of ultimately the same reason Rand kind of described in his quote. So this got axed, wasn't going to go anywhere. So I was asked just to take their existing one and clean it up. And I did that, and I'm not even going to show you that because I don't like it. It's not what I wanted to do or what I would do. It's just trying to give them something instead of nothing. So I'm not going there. But as I was looking this again, it had been a couple months, and I realized his leg's too short. So I changed it, and this, I think, looks more appropriate. It fits the perspective better. And so this is what we're going to build out. So this is just a placed image. This is actually the PSD, and that's included in the exercise files if you want to walk through those stages and see how I use Photoshop just to make tweaks and stuff on sketches and test them, that kind of thing. So we're going to go to the transparency palette, and I'm just going to set this for maybe less than that. 25. We'll just do 20. Lock the layer. And because I've already, for the drawing template, had those lines built out, I'm going to use these because that didn't change in terms of the weight of the lines that we're going to be using. If I select this, you can see it's, oh wow, I thought it was an exact size, like 7. Well, I'm going to check this because I usually use whole numbers. So let's see exactly. So we'll do one here. Okay, well, it looks like I wasn't at a whole number. Okay, what I'm going to do, because it makes the math easier, and sorry, I didn't plan on doing this, but it is going to make the math easier. So I'm going to do something a little weird, but this is how I do it. I'll unlock this so we have this sketch available for selection. All the paths on top's available. I'm going to make a copy of this like that. Bring it to the front so it's on the top of all those elements. And then I'll just select everything minus the stroke or the guide, of course. And then I'm going to mask it into that shape that's on top. So we know this shape is this size, so making sure we have the proportions locked, I'm just going to select this. I'm going to go 7. I want a whole number. It makes building way easier. You don't have to do math. It's a whole number math's way easier than fractional math, in my opinion. So that's all I do to fix something like that. And then I'm going to cut it. I can select the shape we use and just delete it. So now when I select these, there's 7. That's what I probably should have done or checked before I started recording, but I didn't. But that's how I do it. Kind of my hack to do that. Okay, so now we're going to be, oops, that's right. It moved it to that layer. Let's put it back down here and lock it. Okay, now we're going to build it out. And I'm going to go as fast as I can doing this. You can tell I have some of the elements already built because of the drawing template. So on this one, I'm going to copy it. And I had these here to remind me of the size. That's why I was a little surprised that this wasn't 7. But I'm going to do this because I want to go ahead and rotate this. I'll put these at the same angle. And I'm kind of going off of the quintessential, what era? The Knights of the Round Table type thing here. Now, Dort University, I think technically, I want to say I think they're a Christian university, in which case Knights of the Round Table really doesn't make sense because all the references in the Bible about like knights or armor, that is, are from a Roman context. Like put on the full armor of God, and it says in the New Testament, well, that's using metaphors of the Roman armor. Short double-edged sword, shield, gird your loins, all that kind of stuff. Okay, now we're just going to start using the Pathfinder. Now I moved it over here just because it's better screen space for showcasing work, but I always forget it's over here because on my workstation, it's on the right. So I'm always going over here and then, oh, that's right, it's over here. So there we go. And by the way, I turned on the camera to kind of keep my face centered. And I didn't know you could do different shapes like circles and squares. So I turned it into a square just to keep it small. I couldn't figure out how to make it a little larger though. I don't know if you can. You seem like you could because it's recording at a HD level. So I'm not sure why it wouldn't, but we'll take this and I'll trim it. Go here, make sure that's on top. And I'll trim this. I don't want it to be a perfect size. I want it to taper from a little thicker down to the bottom. Then I'll just clone this. Go to the reflect tool. I always have smart guides on, Command U. Oh, by the way, I'll tell you this story since, and I'll just keep building while I tell you the story. I stayed up till like around midnight to meet with Adobe and talk about snapping, the bug that's been around since CS6 that like I've been trying to get them to fix for 13 years. And they're finally, he shared with me the roadmap for what they're going to be fixing. And he wanted me again to explain to him, so what do you mean by the snapping problem? And I'm like, oh my God, I've told how many AI teams this since back when CS6 came out 13 years ago. Okay, so I explained it to him. He goes, okay, good. He's going, we agree with that. And that was the first. Well, I take that back. 2019, they agreed with me that there was a problem. But they never did anything to fix it. Okay. So let's see here. I think here, I'm just trying to think the best way to do this. I think I'm going to use a square. So anyway, shared the roadmap. So I know what the team is doing. There's going to be another meeting this week that it's one the public's allowed to sit in on. It's not like a new feature that nobody knows about. It's just fixing and improving an existing feature that's long overdue for that. Okay, it looks like my drawing was a little imprecise. He had a lower or a higher shoulder on his left. So we'll do that. I'm just setting up the core shapes, and then I'll use these to build I want. So these are essentially just parts of an oval. And again, you can see how my left doesn't exactly mirror to the right as well, but that's okay. That's where you're never going to draw something perfect. You're always going to have a little issue. So I'll clone this and see how it works to do. I think that's going to work. And now I'm going to use the offset setting of 7. So I'll go offset, but we'll go -7. Preview it to get that gap. You know what? I'm going to try something. I'm going to manipulate this a bit. And we're going to select the right, or the left and the right. We're going to hit the S key for scale. Then we can control and distort the sides like this. This is how you do simple kind of distortion like this if you want. Let's try that again. Something like that. And then I think oops. I think that looks, let's do this. I think this needs to be pinched a bit. There we go. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay, I think that's a little better than just a perfect oval. Then I'll clone this and we'll scale this. And this is where I'll widen this one. So it's wanting to snap on that edge, so I'll do it from this side. Something like that. And again, I think this, I want it to narrow more, so I'll hit the S key with that anchor. Oops. See, this is the part I don't like about this functionality, because in order to do this, you have to select. Once it's selected, you have to hit S, and then you have to click and pull on this, but if you hit the shift key a little too soon, it'll do what it just did. They did not implement this feature very well. It doesn't have to be that hard, but for whatever reason it is. Okay, let's go here. We'll go offset. Where am I going here? Offset path. We'll go -7 is the tolerance. Oh, like why? Why do they didn't put an anchor point over here, and it's identical on their side, so why does it need an anchor point here? So this is where we select it. I don't even use Illustrator's Smart Remove. It's stupid. It takes longer. So I just select it. And if I go up here, this is Smart Remove on PathScribe, and I can just go click, and it works better than Illustrator's, because Illustrator time will still distort stuff. The only thing I don't like about this is I like having more of a gap here. Boy, this is going to take longer than I thought it would. Okay. I think what I'm going to do is move this one up, and I'll use the aesthetic on this side to reflect over. Then let's go ahead and go offset path 7, no minus. I'm having a conundrum, but I think I will do this again. You don't need these anchors. The fact that I can smart remove those with a plugin tells me They shouldn't be there to begin with. Okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'll just bring this out. Like, yeah, actually, I like that. Okay. Now, what we need to do is I will select this shape, the original triangle, and we'll go intersect like that. Then I'll take this shape, making sure it's on top. I'll select this, minus front. We've created a giant weird donut, and we'll minus front out of that. And then I can take the helmet shape, making sure that's in front. Select this. Actually, this shape now, if you go to the appearance panel, it's always going to default to a group. So in this case, I'll just go F6, which is ungroup, so I can isolate this shape. This one on top again, select it, and then go minus front like that. This ultimately will just be part of the black background, so it won't actually go down here. It'll just fuse into this shape. But I'll leave that. So I think that's working okay. Since we're going to have to create the rest of the breastplate, so I'm going to offset this to get that top part. And by the way, I don't know how long this is going to be, so I might build this to a certain point and then stop talking, and then from that point until it's built, I'll speed it up to do a time lapse. That way you don't have to sit through all that. And then I'll end the recording at that point, and then I will come back and figure out all the shading. Then I'll record the end part. So for me, that'll be probably about an hour or so, and then add it to the end so you can see everything. And it won't have to be like, I don't want to make these too long, but I don't want to, go too fast either. I think what we're going to do is I have the sword grouped. I'm going to go in and just take the blade portion and paste it here, and just so you can see it, we'll color it blue. I'm going to build the shoulder on this side. And I think what I'm going to try to do is see if we can use elliptical shape. Just needs to be a little wider. And distort it a bit. That actually looks okay. Before I do anything else on this, I'm gonna select a central anchor point, reflect it over here. So I'm just making a comparison, because it does look quite a bit different. I'm not trying to mirror them exactly. I don't think I need to be that precise, but this is kind of a bit bigger. Now that I'm looking at it, this does stick out further than this, so maybe I can grab this. And if it wants to snap on other things, this is where I go Command U to turn Smart Guides off, then it won't do that. That's one of the things we talked about in that snapping meeting, by the way. Yeah, I like that. I like that better. Okay. Then since we're dealing with shoulders, this is the same height. So I'm going to bring this one all the way down there. Even though it's not the exact same height, I'm going to keep most of this. Then I'll bring this. Wherever it comes to point, gets a point. Then I'll just adjust this. I'm going to try some. Put this here. There we go. Okay. Then I think this is where I'll use the arc tool. I'll go from here, somewhere over here, there, to get that curve. I'll come back to that. Then I'll go here to here to get that curve. We can go back to the pin tool, and I'll close this out. Select this and go minus front, so we have that. And then take this one, clone it, because I'll use it for these other shapes too. And minus front. Just a minute, I just thought of something. Might be better if I do this, go object, path, go offset. So our tolerance for that is 7. So I'm going to try -3 to get the detail on the inside. It's a little thin. Let's try 4. Okay, so I think 4 is the inset we're going to be using. So I'll leave that. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use that arc tool. Create that curve. And that one. That. Go here. Then here. Probably right about there. And I'll just use the pen tool to create the shape. So I need to remember that the inset's 4. Then I'll take this, make a copy, select this shape, go intersect, select this, go intersect, and then I can select this shoulder shape, minus front, bring this one to the front, select this, and go minus front with that. Okay, that looks good. Actually, this shape I don't even need to keep anymore. I'll do the same over here. So go offset, we'll go -4. You know, this one doesn't matter. These won't matter because no shapes, but this one kind of bugs me. So let's see if we can smart move. See, that's where the inset feature, there's other issues with the inset feature. I had somebody comment on the 49er You Draw It, I Build It movie I did. And in that, I'm talking about how when it offsets and it comes to the corner, it goes straight. And he's going, oh my God, I thought I was the only one that even cared about that. And I'm going, and that's what I told the engineer in the snapping meeting. I go, the biggest issue, I told him, with snapping being an intermittent problem, because sometimes it works fine, other times it acts like there's nothing there. I go, the problem with that is that's just fundamental bad UX, because the users will think I did something wrong. And oops, I'm not paying attention here. I actually want to, on this one. Anyway, when snapping doesn't work, most people think, God, what did I do? I did something. Well, no, you didn't do anything wrong. And that's what this guy said in his comment, which is good because it tells me a lot of other people deal with it. They probably just don't vent it as much as I do. Okay, now I'm going to go over here, grab the scissor tool, and oops, turn on Smart Guides, Command U, and I'll cut these. Why am I doing this? Because one of these I want to float like this one, but this one I want to go off the edge. So this where I'll go to Astute Graphics, I'll go to the Extend Path, and I'll extend this down like that. Something I don't do every day, but man, I love that feature. It just makes it so easy. And then this one with the arc tool, I'll create that shape. I could probably improve this by tapering it a little more, like that. Probably looks better. Something like that. I'll close this so we have that ready to go. Now on this one, we'll just build this one. Oops. So click one point to the next point, curve it. You don't have to touch the Bezier curves. That's the nice part about it. Put a curve in there. Come to this one. Do that. We'll go here. There to there. Put a curve there. We can even try to remove that one. Look at that. Smart Remove by Astute is just absolutely solid. Okay, I'm going to take this one, select this one. We'll go intersect. Then I'll take this. It's on top of the shoulder shape. And first thing I want to do is I want to go Object Path, Offset Path. Our tolerance is 7. And that'll give me this. But here's a good example of that offset issue. The guy that commented on the You Draw It, I Build It video. Because of this corner, when it offsets to create this path, these points are created because of this corner. And once it hits here, this curve coming down over here doesn't continue the geometry to make a nice curve. It hits this point, and then it just goes straight. This is something they could fix. But like I said, in the 49ers design that I built, they don't use illustrators, so fat chance they're ever going to hyper focus on this kind of problem. Oops, one of my lights just went out. I don't know why. No biggie. But this is where I'll use that feature, this extend path feature, because I'll just grab this, move it. This is the way it should go. Continue on that geometry. Bring this one over here. Bring this one here. This one here. Switch the pen tool. I'll just close these paths like this. Hit unite. And then just delete these little artifacts where they overlap. But that's how I fix it. Shouldn't be this way. This should be the offset you get in Illustrator. It should be smart enough to know when it hits the equivalent of where this anchor is on an offset, why would it not continue the geometry? That doesn't even make sense. So that's the issue that he had spoken about from my video. And it'd be nice. I offered Illustrator to be on their team for 4 years to help them fix all of these types of issues, but they didn't take me up on it. So it is what it is. Now we'll go over here. Again, we'll use offset because I'm going to use this to create this part of the breastplate. So we'll go offset. And this one didn't do so bad, but still it's doing the same thing when it hits this corner. So I would just cut that, go to the extend path, And I'd probably go all the way here, bring this one over here, switch to the pin tool, close it, unite it, select this part and delete it. Now that gives me everything. I'll actually trim this part of the breast coming up here because this one is going to be down here. Once I have the hand shape built, then I'll knock that out. So I'm not going to worry about this line from here to around the thumb, top of the hand. I'll offset that from these shapes. So I'm not going to worry about that right now. But I will use the guide to kind of create the base. I made that too big. There we go. And then I'm going to do this like that. You might be thinking, what are you doing? I don't get it. It's like, well, it's just to get this because this would be easier just to use the corner widget to get that. So that's why I'm building it that way, but I'm not done. So I'm going to move this. I know this looks weird, but just trust me. I do this kind of stuff all the time. Okay, that's what I want to do. I want to go over here, and I'll start by going off of this anchor. I'm using the Arc tool, part of Vector Scribe plugin by Astute Graph. Oh, no, is it part of Vector Scribe? Nope, it's part of Subscribe. Sorry, wrong plugin. Subscribe plugin by Astute Graphics. Super, super useful feature. So I'm creating these details. This will go off. We'll trim it with the shoulder shape we offset, like that. Oh, now I remember. So I shouldn't have thrown that shape away. I kept it to edit the top of the breastplate. Okay, no biggie. We'll just add it back. Then I'll close this over here. Continue it up here because this will okay. So we created that entire shape, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to test it. I'm going to clone it, go to the reflect tool, snap to a central anchor point, and yeah, I think I'm going to use this gap and everything over on this side as well. But the only difference is I'm probably going to adjust this just to accommodate the edge I add over here. And one thing I'm going to do is let's go ahead and click into isolation mode. Isolations mode is great if you don't want to accidentally move or select other elements that you have in your composition. I'm going to go back to the extend tool and I'm going to extend that geometry so it will cut off this area over here as well. And then that's going to look weird, but it doesn't matter because I just need this edge to do this shape. Okay, then we'll click out of isolation mode. I'll select these three shapes here, and I'll go unite. So it doesn't matter about this. This will all be edited off of the hand shape down here. Now I'll select the shoulder offset, the neckline offset, this other shoulder offset. I'll make copies of them. Command C, Command F. We'll fill it blue, and we'll go and unite it. So it's one shape. Select the breastplate and minus front. So now we have all those elements built. On the breastplate, I would come back and I would round some of these. I'm not going to do that. I'll do that once I get to black and white artwork. But you can see this isn't hard. It just takes some time to do this well. Let's do a super easy shape. This little, sometimes this tool does that. It kicks into this tool mode even though you're in this one. So let's see if it does it again. Nope. Now it's working the way it should. So I'm going to create this little wedge shape here. We'll close it like that. I'll select the sword shape and clone it. Command C, Command F. Select our wedge. Minus front. Select this. Make a copy of this one as well. Command C, Command F. I just hit F3. That's the keyboard shortcuts. Again, if you haven't watched my creating with keyboard shortcuts, watch it and then figure out in your own workflow what you do on a regular basis. I do this type of stuff all the time. So to clone something, I need copies of something like this shoulder shape. What's faster? If I just use it as is, I lose it. So I don't want to lose it. So I select it. You have to go up here and you have to go copy. So it puts it in the clipboard. And then you have to go F, which is paste in front. So you have to do 2 pull down commands in order to get a clone shape. That takes a lot of time. So I just select it. And this is a muscle memory. I have F key set up. So I select it, hit F3, and it's done. Because I recorded an action of that and assigned it to the F3 key, and it makes things go a lot faster. So watch my creating with keyboard shortcuts on People Love channel and figure out what you do on a regular basis. And that's a good indication of what you should turn into a custom keyboard command that you can start using. And once you start using it for years, you won't be able to live without it. Like if I'm on somebody else's machine, I'm trying to show them something, I'm automatically trying to do, I'm going, oh crap, that's right, I'm not on my own machine. And it's like, so it does improve workflow. So all that just for a little wedge. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I like where this is going. I think it's working pretty good. I'm just going to build and let's do this. I'll build this leg because that's not so geometric. There's some freeform type of shapes in there. And I'll build the hand and maybe the plume on his helmet. And then from that point, it'll go into time-lapse mode to create the rest. And we'll see how that goes. Okay, everybody hold up your hands. Which part do you want me to? That'd be kind of nice. Maybe a live video would be the better way to do that. Let's do the leg. So this is the kind of thing where I think a lot of these are arches. So I'm going to use that arch tool because I can go here. And I'm going to think straight or think, well, not a straight line, but a curve that comes to a point. And we'll put the point right about there. Then I'll curve it. Then I can go here down to this point, and then I'll curve it because I can come back and get that round. So think in simple ways like that, and you'll save so much time because you don't have to try to monkey around with these curves all the time. You can actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I want this hand to offset 7, so it'll cut into this. So I'm going to pull this down a little more to accommodate that. Then I'll go here, then I'll switch back to the arc tool, and I'll go right about here to get that shape. This is basically an arch here, so we'll do that. What I like about it is I'll just smart remove an anchor like that just to get the exact curve I want by adjusting it with the Bezier handles. Pierre Bezier, who the Bezier handles were named after. If you've never heard me mention that, he worked for Renault, the car company in France. He thought their body styles were too blocky, And so he used math to come up with the ability to do more elegant shapes on cars. I'll go ahead and round this here. So I'd do something like that, I think. Let me zoom out. I'm going to try something. I thought we could just do it straight, but this might be the case where it just look better if we don't. So I'm going to... Oh, I can already tell I like this better. Okay. Now on this one, we have one here. We could smart remove that. And then finesse it. I think it needs to bump out a little more. That looks good. Let's do his shin. Actually, we'll go here, we'll go path, we'll go offset path. I'm going to cut this shape, get rid of the rest. Another usage of extend path just to make it go further. I was watching an older movie this morning as I was preparing to record this, and it had Gene Hackman in it. It was based off of a Grisham book, which the book was a lot better, but it's a pretty good movie. Man, it's so sad about Gene Hackman and his wife. He's one of my favorite actors. I was in art school, and me, a guy Mike, and a guy Mark, we had just left Pike Place Market because our what was the name? Bill Sears William Sears was his name. He was like in his 70s teaching art school. One of the funnest teachers I ever had. But the reason why I'm telling you this is he would have the class. He'd just tell the class one day, hey, on Thursday, don't show up for class. Just go down to Pike Place Market. We're doing life drawing of whatever we see down there. And that was always pretty fun. So we're walking back from that one day. We had just left. We were in downtown Seattle. We're standing on a curve. And I'm having a hard time doing this. I'm trying to word that. Okay. Oh, duh. Here. And we're standing at the curve. We're holding our sketchbooks and stuff. And I see this guy across the street with headphones on. And he's holding a paper clip and a walkie-talkie in one hand. And he's pointing at us. And he's yelling at us. And I go, what's this guy's problem? And he's saying, you guys have to move. You have to move. He runs across the street. And I'm like, why? He's going, you're in the shot. And so he moves us like 8 feet down the curb. So I guess we're not in the shot. And then I'm going, we're in the shot. What's he talking about? And then I look beyond him down the sidewalk and I see a movie camera set up and the director and stuff. And I'm looking around and I notice they have cops on the street holding traffic back because it's part of the shot. And I'm going, who are they shooting? And so I start looking around and, oops, this has to be on top. I start looking around behind us down the sidewalk from the corner we were at. And lo and behold, there's Gene Hackman. And there's somebody he's with. And I recognized her, but I couldn't think of her name. Well, I couldn't think of his name either. I couldn't remember Gene Hackman at the time. And I'm going, look, it's Lex Luthor. Because that's what I remembered his character he played in Superman was Lex Luthor. But it was Gene Hackman, so I watched him film the scene. By the way, we sneak over after the scene starts filming to where we were. And then I look over at my friend Mark and he's grabbing his he's grabbing his crotch. I'm gonna ruin this scene, you know. And for years I always wondered, I wonder if we ended up in the movie. And then finally I figured out years later, you know, when you could buy, when they had video stores and you could buy video. And then it wasn't until online streaming that I figured out by using Internet Movie Database what film it was. And then finally found a service that had the film. So I decided to rent it just to check to see if we were in any of the shots. Well, unfortunately, we weren't in any of the shots, but and it was a pretty lame movie, actually. But the actress that was with him, who I didn't recognize at the time, I recognized her by look, but not, I don't even know if I would recognize her by name, was Anne Margaret. So, but I went up to him, and in that sketchbook, I still have it, it's in my flat files. He signed, I got his autograph, Gene Hackman's autograph. So that was pretty cool. I haven't met a lot of actors. There's been a few. Like when I was 12 years old, every summer we'd go up to San Juan Islands here in Washington. And my dad had a close friend who he grew up with who ran a resort on San Juan Island. So we'd always stay at, it's called Lonesome Cove Resort. It was always fun. And we're pulling in, you take ferries to all the islands up there. We're pulling in one time. My dad points out over to the marina to our right, and he says, "See that big yacht over there?" And I go, "Yeah, that's John Wayne's yacht." And I'm like, "What? It is?" And he goes, "Yeah." And it's like, and then he starts telling me a story about how John Wayne bought an old World War II destroyer and turned it in to a yacht for himself. And so every summer he would drive. Do you say drive with a boat? I never thought about that. He would take his yacht from basically Los Angeles area, and he would go all the way up into the San Juan Islands and hang out there for a month or so every summer. So he was in Friday Harbor, is where the ferry docks. He was there, and I'm like, "Oh, that's cool." So John Wayne's probably hanging out in his boat or whatever. So we get off the ferry. We're in downtown Friday Harbor, which is tiny. And my mom says, "I need to get some at the drugstore." So we stop in the drugstore. I go in with my mom. I'm kind of standing in line with my mom. She's getting ready to check out. And somebody walks up behind me. And so keep in mind, I was either 10 or 12, something like that. I wasn't very old. And I turn around and I look up, and it's John Wayne. He's wearing shorts, he's wearing sandals, he has a naval captain's hat on, you know. And I'm just like, "Oh." And he's looking down at me, and all he says is, "How you doing?" And I'm like, I turn around and I like start pulling on my mom's coat. And I go, Mom, you know, and she's saying, "What are you doing? Knock it off," you know. And then finally she turns around to see what the commotion's about, because I keep tugging on her coat. And then she sees John Wayne, and then it just became a grovel fest. But he's probably dealt with that at that point millions of times. But he was a nice guy. It was kind of cool. Okay. Okay, so that's a little, boy, this really whacked out the offset. Fine. I'll go with what, like here's a good example. Like this one, instead of continuing this curve down here and this one coming over, and then the point being probably right about here, it does this where it just goes straight. We won't worry about that. So I'm going to cut this one here. I'm going to cut that, get rid of this line. I'm going to try smart remove these, see if that works. Wow. I shouldn't be surprised that Astute's plugins work so well, but you try doing that with Illustrator Smart Remove and it won't even come close. I'm going to, even though I know it's 7 points, what it gave me in general, again, we're going to turn off Smart Guides, Command U, because it'll want to try to snap, and here I want to make micro adjustments. Okay, then I'm going to go back to that Extend Path tool. I'm going to extend this all the way down here. I'm going to extend this all the way to right about there. Then I'll go back to the Arc tool. And we'll go ahead and create this part of his foot. And I'm going to fudge this too. Okay. Let's do this. Whole reason I did that is because I'm going to do this with this shape. So even though I drew it this way, actually, now that I think about it, I think it does. I'm going to smart remove that. Be easier to control it with these Bezier handles. Okay, I'll make a copy of this. Select this shape, minus front. Okay. And select this shape. We'll use that. Select this. We'll go to offset. So again, this is, we'll fix this up here, and this one down here we'll fix as well. So we'll go in here, turn on Smart Guides, we'll cut it there, take the path, delete it, go back to the extend path. We just need to extend this up to right about, zoom in. Well, that's interesting. I can't extend it. Okay. Then here's what I'm going to do. Sometimes there are limits. I'm not exactly sure why, but I'll make a clone of this. I'll color it blue. I just want to keep a copy underneath so I can see where it's at. Then I'll select this end and I'll just manually move it. Then I'll just adjust it to keep it in the same position with the one underneath. Then I'll just delete the original one like that. Then on the bottom here, if I want to extend this, I would extend it. Probably right about there. Like that. And this is all going to be fused with the black. So I'll just close this shape up here. But we want to use this to so it cuts into this shape, etc. Okay. I think what I'm going to do, I should have been tracking the time on this. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to finish up this leg shape, so this little highlight and this left profile on this side. Then I'll create the hand here, and we'll do the plume, and then everything from that will just be time lapse. And then I just don't want this to be, drag on too long. I thought this would go a little faster, but it's a little more complex than I expected. By the way, if any of you have something you've drawn out and I'm looking for something to do another episode of You Draw It, I Build It, by all means, email it to me. You can find the email to use just in the description below any movie on People Love channel. Just go in there and you'll see an email address you can send it to. And then now, if you send me a sketch that's this complex, I'm probably not going to pick it. So think a little more simplified. I don't want it to be, I'm not going to do a full-blown illustration. So there's give and take to that concept. But maybe it's something you draw because you want to challenge me. That's okay too. I wouldn't mind doing that. At the How Design conference years ago, it was when Iron Chef was really popular on the Food Network, and guest chefs would come in and they'd battle it out with the Iron Chefs. By the way, I always like Hirazuki Sakai, I think was his name. He's like a classical French chef, but Japanese. I always liked, he was always my favorite just because I like how he came up with stuff. Morimoto was pretty good too. It was an interesting show. But anyway, because that was popular, the How Design Conference would do these design competitions, like live. And there would be 4 people up on stage in front of their laptop or whatever. And they would just give them a challenge. And they had like 40 minutes to create whatever it was based off of what the theme they were given. And those were pretty fun to watch. I never wanted to do it. I hate working under pressure like that. I get nervous when my cat sits on my desk and just stares at me, and all she wants is treats. So okay, this offset's kind of whack, but it doesn't matter because most of it won't even be used. So I'm gonna cut it there. So it got us most of the way, but down here, I really want this to follow that geometry right there, where if it was smart, it would know that. And then now that we've created the curve on this shape, I don't need to worry about oops. I guess what I'll do is let me do this. I'll create a shape like this. Zoom up so you can see it. And I'll unite it. Now I'll go back to I'll put a curve in it like that. That looks good. And just for the sake of it, I'll color it blue. So we have all those shapes that'll make up, since this is the exterior shape, let's color that blue. So all of these, do I have it at the top? You know what? Just for clarity, we'll select all of these and we'll go ahead and unite them because that's ultimately what I'll do anyway. So there we go. I might go back and even though it would break the tolerance, I might go back because I kind of like this getting thicker out here. We'll see. I might change my mind. Next thing we want to do, don't need that guy. is, I think we're done with this shape now that we did the breastplate. So I can get, actually, instead of getting rid of it, we'll just put it here in X. I'm going to build the hand, and then I'll build the plume, and then we'll go into time-lapse mode. By the way, I was getting ready to come into my recording booth to start recording this. My wife goes, "Are you done recording yet?" And I go, "I haven't started." "Oh, do you know how long you're going to be?" I'm going, this one might take about an hour or so. And the reason why she's asking is we have like a robot vacuum thing. And if she turns it on, while I'm recording, then it's loud enough that it might be picked up in the recording. So I don't know why I'm telling you guys this. The thing is, I've tried to get my cats to ride on it because I've seen videos where cats are sitting on them and just riding around. I thought that was hilarious. And our cats are afraid of it. They don't want to get around it. Like, okay. I'm just trying to get the ghost handles so I can pull out stuff like that. So I'm not worrying about the curves. Just getting my anchor point placement where I think it should be. And I do the curves. Notice how it's trying to snap to something else. So hit Command U to disable smart guides. Smart guides are great, but sometimes they'll get in the way. So you'll always be wanting to toggle them on and off. I think right about there. Then we'll close it. This is the case where the sword's kind of getting in the way. So since I grouped it, sometimes I'll start organizing like that. And by the way, notice how this layer color, you might have noticed this. I always build in medium blue because I prefer it. It doesn't get in the way. In this case, I put it on its own layer just so we can focus on this without it distracting us. We're going to build it slightly a smaller size. Mine can go down to hairline. And now I'll adjust stuff. And we're going to use, you can grab the path and put these subtle curves in these fingers instead of leaving them perfectly straight. Like that. This subtly curved. Get the front end of the finger looking good. There's a local orthodontist I've been doing work for now for a couple of years. And when he first showed me like artwork that somebody else had done for him for characters that he uses, because a lot of his work is with kids and stuff, the illustration wasn't that great. I mean, and I'm like going, okay, do I just tell him I don't want to do this? Or I decided to help him out, and I tried to improve the artwork, but he's pretty locked into it. So I figured out a way where I can still improve it, but give him kind of what he wants. And just think of all the characters smiling, teeth with braces on, every one of them. And a lot of them, all of them for the most part. I did a Christmas theme pack for him that had an elf, which is kind of a human looking type of character. but most of them are animals. Although that had Santa too, so he had braces on. Anyway, I've been doing these inside of his office. He has a beautiful building he built. Inside his office, he has an internal network of monitors, and so he can have promotions kind of running on those so everybody can see him. So he had used Keynote to do some things, and he asked me if I could do Keynote. I said, sure, I do Keynote. And so I started doing these promos for him. So we did one for, well, it started last year, the end of last year. So it started, like, I did a Halloween one because he does a Halloween event for kids, like Trick or Trunk, something like that, in his parking lot at his office building. And so I made one with all these monsters. Of course, they're all smiling, wearing braces. And I had to figure out how to do all this animation stuff in it. And so I did Halloween, I did Christmas, and I just finished his spring/Easter one where I have spring themes like flowers. There's a flower that shows up and he smiles and he has braces, But a lot of animated stuff in it. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I have a little bumblebee that I did, a new character I did for him. And of course, he has braces too, which is kind of funny. But I want him to be flying like kind of erratic across the screen and stuff. And so there's something in Keynote called Move, and you can do that. And it has vector controls on, oops, it's doing it again. It has vector controls. And I started playing with them, and I'm like, hold on. I go, this really works well. I mean, I was doing these smooth curves, and I don't know what they call it. It's Bezier curves, but it's not like Bezier's in Illustrator. And when I met with the Adobe guy last week, I was telling him about it. I go, somebody on your team needs to look at that because that is way more intuitive than your curvature tool, for example. And I'm just going, if you did something that worked as simple as what they have in Keynote, it'd make people's lives easier to do something more free-flowing. I was really surprised, but eventually, okay, I'll share. Actually, a friend of mine, I was talking to him about it yesterday, and I sent him a link to a video that I posted on Dropbox. I will post a link to that Dropbox video so you can watch, and I'll do that today after I'm done recording, so you guys can check out that animated video. It's only like a minute and a half long, and we're not talking Pixar, Disney, or anything. It's pretty crude, but the people that go to his studio really like him, so that's kind of fun. So we're going to do an offset of this hand. So let's do that. And I think on this, I'm going to try round, see what that does. I think that looks better. Yeah, I think that just looks better. It looks awkward when it comes to a point like that. And I think that's going to give us everything we want, actually. I will go in on some of these, like this one. And by the way, I'm going to use, I try to balance my use, but I prefer Astute Graphics because I can do one. You don't have to pre-select an anchor. You can try one. If you like it, then it remembers that, and then you can apply it to the other. I think that looks good. I might put a subtle one there and then bring that into these as well. So that's how I use Astute's dynamic corners, which, by the way, pre-existed Illustrator's features by well over 7 years. I remember one time I was invited to, Astute invited me to come up to Nike headquarters, which is like about 45 minutes north of me. And they wanted me to do a demonstration showcasing some of the tools for Nike in-house designers. And I did that. Just happened to be Adobe's Illustrator team, the heads were there, and they sat in on it. And they didn't, at the time, they didn't have rounding. They didn't have any of these features that they've eventually ripped off from Astute. And you could tell they were like, that's a pretty good feature. Yeah, it is. That's why you guys need to get on the ball. Okay, last thing we're going to do, and then I'll stop talking. I'll just focus on building. And I'm going to build this. So this is more of a free-flowing shape. I don't think it's too hard of a shape. Just think of the clockwork method I've covered in other videos. I think this is such a short distance to 12 o'clock position that I'm not even going to put an anchor point there. I'm just going to go here, pull it out enough to get access to the curves, comes down to here, pull it out enough, comes to a point, gets a point. This short enough, comes to a point, gets a point. This one, I think we'll put one here, but I'll probably smart remove it. Comes to a point here, pull it out just enough. As we get here, just enough. And then I'm going to pretend it goes all the way here. This is a shallow curve, so we'll go right to the point. Shallow curve up here, and we'll go right about here. Pull out the anchors, close the shape. So that's the rough build. Then I'll go back and do another round where I adjust it. And I love using, and if you don't have Astute graphics plugins, you'll want to do this with the anchor point handle here. And you can go here, pull out the path, get access to the handles, but notice it's going to move stuff like this. So I don't use that tool. I use it in the content I create for LinkedIn because people need to see native methods, not just plugins, even though I show that too. I use dynamic corners just because it's so, or I'm sorry, path scribe, because it's so intuitive. You get these white nodes, ghost handles, just grab and pull. Doesn't affect this one up here. Then I can adjust this. This one doesn't need to go out so far. I'll retract that back. And then it's just a matter of finessing this until I get it looking the way I want. You can also grab the path and those handles come out like that. I can grab this node and adjust it to finesse this path. And then I'm going to adjust these Bezier handles to get this curve here at the top. I can grab this one, pull it out like that. This one as well. This is an example where I might smart remove this because I think it looks more elegant without having one there. Now, when I offset this, Illustrator will put an anchor point there. Now that I'm looking at it, it might actually, it's just not in the right position. I might position it here, then get that, because this makes it, pulling this handle out too much here makes this look flat. So we'd want to taper it, kind of like that. Then I'd adjust this one. This one can curve into this gap, so you won't see this part. And I think this needs to be slid over. That looks pretty good. So it's not hard. You just have to take the time. The more you do it, the easier it gets. A lot of these reels you see online where they're trying to show the curvature tool, look how great it works. Curvature tool sucks. It's like, I remember when they first came up to me at Max conference. Oh, I want to show you this tool we're creating. It's called the curvature tool. And he sat down, and it was a beta version of it wasn't even Illustrator. It was in like a development mode thing on his laptop. And I go, sure, I'll take a look at it. And so he shows me, he goes, try it. Tell me what you think. And I go, so this makes building curves easier? And he said, yeah. And I go, oh, so is this like if I hold down the Option key with the pen tool, it'll kick into this mode? Well, no, we were thinking a separate tool. And I'm just going, why? Why is it always a separate tool? Why not just, it's part of pen tool functionality. Just make it part of the pen tool. Of course, they didn't, and they wonder why nobody really uses it that much. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. The offset on this is, I just know is going to be horrible, but we'll give it a shot anyway. This one's bugging me. I think, even though you think tangents, I think the angle plays more of a part in this than the tangent. I think that looks better than what we had. Maybe this just needs to be pulled over more. There we go. Okay. I tend to really get fussy about this stuff. Okay, let's offset this, see what it looks like. We go offset and not round, but miter. Yeah. Look at this up here. Oh my God, this is horrible. This doesn't matter. You won't see any of this. This doesn't matter. So unfortunately, this is where you're just going to have to, oops, you have to click OK first. You're going to have to finesse this, but even here, this looks wonky. So you know what? I'm just going to turn Smart Guides back and cut here. I'm going to cut it here. I'll cut it here. And we'll cut it here. So I'll just get rid of these elements we don't want. Like that. This doesn't, none of this matters, so I don't have to worry about that. But this, we want to use the extend path. So we'll go back to this and we'll extend this. So you can see the geometry on this one's wanting to go here, you know, to retain that. I don't think that looks bad, but I don't think it's hard and fast rule in this context. So I'm going to go to where my drawing was and just adjust this. And I think that looks, I have my head at an angle. That looks good. This one's probably going to be the hardest one. So I'll start here. I'll go here. Like that. I'm going to try just smart removing that just to see what it does. That doesn't look bad. Let me adjust this ghost handle. Okay, I think what we need to do is select this and move it. So we're going to go to the reposition point tool. And I'm going to put it at a tangent that's at a 12 o'clock. This will be easier to control. So if I pull this out and then pull this back, that still looks wonky to me. Yeah, that looks kind of horrible. Okay, so let's see if we can position this there. That looks better. I think we need to adjust it. And then we can adjust this one. I think this needs to come out a little more. I think that looks pretty good. That wasn't as hard as I thought it would. Okay, let's do this one up here and then we'll call it good. So wherever it comes to a point here, we'll go here. That looks fine. We can probably smart remove that. And this one, if you think of a circle, it's going to come right about there. So I'll continue here. We'll close it. Go to Path Scribe tool. This is a tough one. I'm going to smart remove that. That just makes it harder. That still doesn't look very great. I think that I might come back. Let me try this. I might come back and tweak that still. Maybe this should go over. Okay, that doesn't look too bad. I might tweak that a little later, but this is as far as we've gotten. So from this point, I'm just going to do time lapse until we get to the part where I can create black and white art. And then we'll do that. And that's where I'll start talking again. So thanks for watching up to this point. But stay tuned, because in a matter of seconds, you'll see the next stage for me. It'll probably be, I would guess, another hour, something like that. So I'll try to keep track. It's what time it is and how long it takes. So see you on the flip side. Okay, so I have pretty much the base art built now. These are all, the base vector graphics. The sword is still on its own layer. And I built out and combined different shapes from that base art to create the black and white. We can turn off the sketch. I think what I want to do with this is I want to sit on it, because I don't like pushing ahead until I'm absolutely sure. So I'm going to sit on it, take a look at this. I'm recording this on a Saturday, so I'll take a look at this either later tonight or tomorrow morning, etc. And I will figure out if there's any tweaks I want to make. And then I'll figure out the shading by printing this out and actually drawing on it. That's how I figure out how to do the shading, because ultimately I want this to only be well, if you count white as a color, white, black, and a shading value. So it's going to be very monochromatic in that respect. And I don't want to rush that. I want to take time to think through that. So this will end in terms of my recording for today, but not the end of the video, because for you, it'll just be a fraction of a few seconds until you get to see everything. But I've been in my recording booth for at least an hour and a half or so, and I'm starting to sweat. So I'll see you in just a few seconds. Okay, I am all done with doing the detail, working out the shading. I'm going to walk you through that in a little bit. One thing I kind of failed to define after the time-lapse portion is that the time-lapse made up about 1.1 hours of build time after I stopped, doing a narrative for this video. So that's how long that portion took. I sped it up quite a bit, so it's only about a minute long, but it actually took me an hour just over an hour to finalize that. Now, on the part that we're going to go over now, which is the final black and white artwork, and there's something I did to this after I stopped recording. I'm going to show you that too, and that's subtle rounding. I just think when you bring that into the context of a design like this, or even logo design and iconography, adding subtle rounds are always great because it makes it look more handcrafted, not organic handcrafted, but it just takes a lot more time and dedication to improve that level of detail, and it adds to the overall aesthetic, in my opinion. So everything I'm going to go over now took me roughly 2 hours. I did it that same night I recorded everything else, but I did it in between playing PUBG games. So I say 2 hours, but it didn't take me 2 hours because a PUBG game can go 25 minutes or so. So probably about, I'd say, maybe an hour, something like that. Once again, as soon as the game would end, I'd jump back on, work it out, and then as soon as I was gathered for a game, I'd jump back into the game. So that's kind of the way it goes. So this is where we left off. This is the black and white artwork here. And I liked it. And after sitting on this for a while and coming back to it with fresh eyes and looking at it, I didn't see anything distinctly wrong, but when you have vector art like this, if we zoom in on this, you can see it always comes to a dagger sharp point because it's vector. It's mathematically precise because it's based off of math. That's what vector art is. That's why it's resolution independent. And I could blow this up to be 5 stories tall on a large format printer if it represented a school, let's say, or on a basketball court or whatever. It's always fun seeing your artwork that big, but in this case, I thought I needed to add some subtle rounds. So we're on the black and white artwork, and I obviously make a copy of this so that I can test it out before I commit to it, or if I don't like something, I can just toss it and start over. But we're going to go ahead and round on this, and when I do subtle rounding, everything I'm going to show you, you could do with the corner widget, but the only thing I don't like about the corner widget is you have to select the anchor before you can round. And I'm not always sure that I want all these certain points the same roundness on them. So I like using Astute Graphics Dynamic Corners tool. I was using it like 7 years before Adobe ripped it off and implemented it in a less intuitive way, in my opinion, because it gets in the way of selection unless you're really zoomed in at times. So we're going to go to the Astute Graphics Dynamic Corners tool is what it's called. It's part of the Vector Scribe plugin. Now, the Vector Scribe plugin has a range of tools that you can use. Under this, it has the dynamic corners. It has all these tools here. It has the measurement tool and the shape tool. So lots of different tools in one plugin. So I don't use all of them all the time, but I definitely use a lot of them, like the extend path I showed. But we're going to focus on dynamic corners because I don't have to select anything. I can just hover over anything that's technically a corner, and you can see, well, this is what it looks like if you round it that much. Well, I wouldn't want to round it that much. I would want to round it something like that. And I like that. Well, it remembers that setting, so I can go to another corner. Let's go down here and just apply it to that corner, and I have the exact same radius. So I kind of prefer doing it this way, but anything that comes to a dagger sharp point, like here on his helmet, I think adding little subtle rounds here would look good. And then maybe instead of this coming to a distinct corner, you know, we could put a little bigger rounds here, like that. Oops, make sure I click on it once. There you go. And that's the kind of detailing that I'm going to go through all the artwork that's black and white. So here, this is the flat black and white artwork that we stopped at, and I continued. And I'm going to turn on this layer because we'll compare the rounds between his shoulder, his right shoulder here, and what it looks like after I rounded him. So let's go and turn this on. You can see I added rounds, and it just really improves the aesthetic, I think, of the artwork. I just think, and these red things aren't vector art. That's just what the plugin shows you where you've applied around. And I just think this kind of subtle rounding really buttons up a design really nicely. And I did that everywhere on the art. So if you look at this shape, let's go ahead and look at that shape there. I'll turn off rounding. This is what the source art looked like. And then after I rounded it, it adds all those nice little rounds into it. And so I did that on the entire design. And I did that before I started drawing any of my shading, just to make sure everything was going to be kosher as we move forward and build it. But it's this stage of the process that I printed a black and white copy out. And I started doing this years ago because I would noodle around in Illustrator trying to figure out shading. And I just waste so much time doing that. I go, you know what? I'm just going to print this out and draw on my printout and figure it out, because I'd go a lot faster. And so that's what I do. I print it out, and this shows the pencil drawing, where I've done this so much now that I can pretty much nail it the first time, and then I just erase. I don't draw really hard on the paper. So I'll erase if I don't like something and try it again. But this is how I figured out how to apply the shading. This is going to be more like, it's a little different than some projects, because every project and client, if it's an established branding and entity like this university, their primary colors are black and a gold type color that you saw in the artwork I showed at the beginning. They're not using this, so I'm just going to colorize this in a monotone of gray. And so this pretty much shows what it should look like after I build it, since the pencil lead is gray. So, and like my drawings, my source drawings, I go ahead and I just scan it in with a flatbed scanner. And on this one, we're just going to go to transparency palette. I'm going to turn on multiply, and let's go and set this to about 40, like that, just so we can see it. And I lock that layer. And so I have my vector art right underneath it. So I just align it to the drawing that I drew it on the printout, and then I build out all my vector shapes. And I'm doing this with a specific tolerance, so it matches areas of my design. So the tolerance between the shading on the border, you know, it's this much. And then as it gets to the head, I make it a little darker, as if it's casting a shadow on the rim. And then down here, I kind of handle it by breaking it. So it can start going on the left-hand side. Since our light source is kind of top right, is how I compose this design. But these are all the source vectors, and then simply coloring them gray. Let's go ahead and turn off the drawing part now, and you can see what this looks like. So I really like how this came out. It didn't take me a long time to do this, but it was a fun project. I hope you enjoyed it. You can see I put stuff in the X layer because I always do that as I'm building. And most of the projects, I'm going to include that in it, because there's times where I'll explore something. I'll usually mention that so you can go there, turn it on, and see one direction I went and decided, that's not working out, and I go in another direction. But I kind of save it all, because it might not work for a certain project, but that I'm working or creating for, but I might use it on something else. So now I had posted a sketch about this, and you can see the name of my file is Knights of the Vector Roundtable. That's just because I was having fun with naming the file. But I posted it, and I asked you guys to comment on what name you wanted to get it, and you guys provided all kinds of cool names. There's so many I just really like, but the one that kind of stuck with me was Sir Bezier. I thought that's good because it's a little inside joke on vector art. Bezier curves were named after Pierre Bezier. I think I might have mentioned that earlier in the movie, but so Sir Bezier is the winner, Knight of the Vector Roundtable, and it's Pixelbox Creative that came up with that. So Pixelbox Creative, go to the description below this movie. You'll find an email. Email me telling me that you're the one whose name got picked for for the night of the Vector Roundtable character design that we worked on in this movie. And I'll send you some free stickers to say thanks for participating. So I hope someday I can find a good home for this design orphan rather than it just sitting on my hard drive and doing nothing. So if you ever see a school and they have a really bad kind of night character, this would be an ideal situation for I give them a discount, let's put it that way. I just would like to see it adopted and used by somebody. But I'm glad I brought it to life. At least I have this to show for it. And I hope you glean some insight into the process from this movie. That's always my goal with all the content I create. And until next time, once again, thank you for watching. And I hope what I've shared with you will help you improve your own creative process.